Welcome to School Talk. I'm Nadja Varney, your host. You know, when we think of the youth, we think of zest and life, but sadly, we have a serious problem. Shockingly, for youth that from ages like 10 to 24, suicide is the third leading cause of death. Who is committing suicide? Why? And what can we do to help prevent it? Well, I'm delighted to welcome from the Rhode Island Samaritans, Denise Panichas, and she's going to help us understand the problem of suicide. Welcome, Denise Panichas. Am I saying that correctly?
You're saying it correctly.
Thank
Denise
you.
Panichas,
Well, with
yes.
a name like Nadja Varney, you know, I'm used to being mispronounced too.
That's okay.
Of course, I know the biblical stories, most people do, about the Good Samaritan who helped somebody in despair or no one else would help. But I know you're not a religious organization.
That's correct.
And many of us have seen the signs on bridges and highways with your outreach to people who are in despair. But maybe you could just briefly tell us, who are the Samaritans? Are they affiliated elsewhere other than Rhode Island? And a little bit about them.
The Samaritans actually began in the 1950s in England. There was an Anglican minister named Chad Vara who heard the story of a young girl who died by suicide after she had gotten her period. And he vowed from that day forward that no one should be so alone that they would have no one to talk to. And he began an international movement now, I believe, is in over 40 countries, and it is a volunteer-based befriending organization, which means that all of the Samaritan suicide prevention branches practice what is called befriending, and befriending is non-judgmental listening. And what we believe is that through befriending, you can be the gateway to care for everyone from teens to senior citizens. And so today there is actually a website called Befrienders Worldwide, where you can find all the Samaritan branches around the world. Each of them are independent. We are an independent nonprofit organization, just as Fall River would be, or Fall River, New Bedford, or Cape Cod, or Boston, or New York. But we all practice the same principles, which is non-judgmental listening.
Well, you know, I'm always amazed that in a country that's supposed to be, you know, we're full of democracy and caring, and we're one of the richest countries in the world, to think about someone being that lonely is kind of depressing in a way.
Sure.
But how prevalent is this problem of suicide, and is it growing? Are the rates rising?
Well, if we're going to stick to, for a minute, just to talk about teens, you're absolutely right. It's the third leading cause of death. And then the experts look at other things like self-inflicted injuries. What's been interesting, I came to the Samaritans in 2001, I believe it was, and we looked not only at deaths, but you look at people who are at risk. So you have deaths, you have attempts, but then what you have are people who are at risk for suicide. And in Rhode Island, and I'm sure those numbers match every other state, there are literally tens of thousands of teens and as well as adults who are hospitalized for behavior health-related issues that put them at risk for suicide. And so it is a huge problem across the nation, and more specific information can be found for statistics, can be found on the websites for the Center for Disease Control or the U.S. Surgeon General, and you can actually get state-by-state information, which I don't have off the top of my head, but it's definitely available to people, and it's a very interesting problem. They can also look at their local state health department, which also each state would have a suicide prevention program that to tell them specific statistics for those states. But it is a huge problem when you look at it. In Rhode Island, for example, there were, I think in 2010, somewhere about 160 deaths or so, something close to that for all ages, of which I believe 50 of them were children ages 10 through 25. I'd ask your viewers not to say that's in granite, but it kind of shows you the spectrum of the problem.
Well, you mentioned something I hadn't thought of, people who are hospitalized and then become at risk. I think over the years we've had a stereotype in our mind about who would ever commit suicide. So I'm going to ask you, can you tell me, who are these kids that attempt suicide, or those that actually do it? Is there some sort of a profile? Is there some way to recognize it?
I'm going to take that a step back before we
do.
talk about that. We are very fortunate at the Samaritans Rhode Island that we have medical professionals who help us, and they mentor us, and they volunteer for us. And we have learned 3 things about the truly suicidal. They are hopeless. They believe that no one cares if they live or die, and in the end, they're doing everybody a favor if they die by suicide.
They're hopeless, no one cares, and they think it's a positive thing that they're getting off of life.
They're doing everybody a favor. So at some point, we're all hopeless. At some point, we think people don't care. So what did your mom say about that? Like, she cares? What did your husband say about that? I can't talk to him about it. It could be anybody. You can understand what that is. And so at some point we all feel that, but we don't take it to the next step. For the truly suicidal, they take each step and then go to the next one. Where in the end they actually feel that when they've tried to talk to people, people may brush it off, not take it seriously. And, you know, all of us have done it. You say to your kid, oh, enough with that now. But for some people, their problem is so overwhelming that they reach out or they don't reach out, but at some point they feel like they've been a burden. And so they get to that point where they think that their only option is suicide. What we have learned from the experts, and certainly we've heard it on the hotline, it's not that people want to die, they just want to end whatever's causing the pain, and they cannot think of any options, which we can talk about what their options are a little later.
So this feeling, these 3 this characterization that you've made of feeling so hopeless and, you know, no one to talk to, and then thinking this was the answer, is this especially true in those teenage years, do you think, with all the pressures of peer pressure and school pressure, and now it seems it's so connected to the TV? And I am going to take my question to that area. There's so much cyberbullying that we hear about now.
Definitely a problem.
In fact, in the news, a young girl that not so long ago, because she was bullied, and people are sort of anonymous now. They can do this without attacking people or bullying people face to face. They use the internet. So I'll throw this out to you. What are the major causes and the risk factors for the suicide and the attempted suicides? Because I understand there are many that attempt it and just don't do it. But especially thinking about young people of school age, how is the internet and cyberbullying involved, and what are the risk factors or the major causes?
Well, let's take it back to your very first question, though. Your first question is about those 3 characteristics. They are across the board for all ages. Doesn't make any difference whether you're a child or whether you're a senior citizen. Those 3 issues come up across the board.
Isn't that sad? You'd think by the time we've gotten some maturity and built some friendships in this world, that is very sad, isn't it?
Well, as we all know, you can walk into a room full of people and feel very alone. The World Health Organization says the single biggest risk factor is the lack of connectedness to family and friends and professionals.
I have heard so many people, psychologists as well, who have said to me, if you have a good friend, even one, you may not need counseling. And you mentioned earlier befriending.
Befriending. Well, now let's go back to your point about all these other characteristics.
Yes, please.
I think that the challenge for everybody is how do we build resiliency in people? Okay, so when we're talking about teens, I remind people, for example, that when you talk about bullying, people don't die because they've been bullied. They die because they think no one cares that they've been bullied. Because if you cared, you would help make this stop. All right, again, going back to what are my options? I'm being bullied. What are my options? Okay, and it doesn't make any difference whether you're a child or an adult. People get bullied for the rest of their life. It can come in all sizes and all shapes. But if people really cared, maybe they would help me. Now, one of the things that we want to communicate to your viewing audience is what you just started to say about connectedness and characteristics. You see that a child has reached out to you. What we encourage people to do is to take every threat seriously. All right, don't dismiss it. Now, certainly no one has an argument with their child thinking that death is going to be the outcome. But in fact, what we believe are that people are dropping hints. But would you know what to look for, and would you know what to do? So that goes back to the characteristics that we're talking about. Certainly stress, certainly involvement, caring family, caring community, all of that. The huge wild card that, as it relates to teens, not only are they going through those formative years and you've got hormones going all over the place, but drugs and alcohol are playing a huge role in how kids are responding to things. We know it's a problem for adults, but what we also know, it's a huge problem for teens.
Yes, I wanted to get into that a little bit later, but while we're talking about the teens, and you mentioned there that when we hear somebody dropping hints and we don't pick up on it, I think there are some myths out there about, you know, when we hear people or adults speak about it, that we just kind of brush it off. Could you speak a little more to that, what are some of these myths? What are people thinking when they just kind of think, oh, that'll pass, you know, it's not serious?
Know, the myth is that it couldn't be my child.
That's true. One in the
That's a
family.
huge myth. Can't be my child. If there is if there's any huge risk or myth that I can tie together between risk and myth, is that there is no one size fits all to suicide. Doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor. The commonality are those three factors: hopeless, nobody cares, and I'm doing everybody a favor. One of the problems, however, is access to care. Now, people have asked me about, you know, is it the economy? Is it, could be anything. You know, a child feels the pain of the parent. And oftentimes they may not come to the parent because their parent is a caregiver of another child, of a family member, etc. And that child has needs. And it could be that the parent is under stress and they're not listening to the child. All right. And so
that makes a lot of sense in this society where perhaps both parents are working, coming home tired, below or at the poverty line, and then this child is feeling needy and hopeless. There isn't a lot of time.
And that child doesn't want to be a burden to that
to
adult.
the family, or the family is not even aware.
Right. And so that's where the risk factors and those kinds of things that they're saying common characteristics and myths, I just want to tell the audience it's everybody. And that you should not take any of it for granted, because we've certainly all heard, whether it's the captain of the football team or it's that child who doesn't make the football team or whatever the sport is, it is across the board. Rich, poor, does not matter, and everybody is potentially at risk.
Well, thank you. We're going to take a break right now, but when we come back, you mentioned a little bit about alcohol and its involvement. So let's talk about whether alcohol, drugs, I mean, now they have celebrities singing about Molly and marijuana and so forth. So let's talk about that and see if it's connected to the growth in suicide rates among teens. We'll be right back. Stay with us. You know this is important.
Can you consent with me? Imagine what you'd see if every child had a book to read. 'Cause every kid across the nation deserves a book to read, and we can make it happen right now. No, I don't know what you've been told, but kids with books learn so much more. So the mission is for us to get a book to each and every child. So let's join hands, book people unite, unearth hidden passion. Come on, we'll have a good time. Plant seeds of inspiration to motivate some magic. To change the writing on the wall, writing on the wall. And make a difference. One book can inspire a child. One book can be the first thing that helps to change a life.
Read to a child today and spark a lifetime of ambition.
Just before the break, we talked about how alcohol, drugs, and firearms are affecting suicide. Now I'm going to turn to you, Denise. I read in the Center for Disease Control and Prevention on their site that the top 3 methods used in suicides, well, especially for young people: firearms, 45%, suffocation, 40%, poisoning, 8%, Do you think the availability now of guns, I mean, in some places down, some states, they can carry guns unconcealed. And then now, when I was young, you couldn't put advertisements for hard liquor on TV. So all the availability of guns and alcohol, and of course, drugs are everywhere. How do you respond to that? Is there a big effect on this attempted suicide and suicides?
Well, the U.S. Surgeon General certainly says that the availability of firearms is a risk factor for suicide. State by state, those are decisions that every state makes on their own. Certainly, we know that people die by firearms, and we don't want them available when there's a household at risk for that. And that's an individual decision that people have to make. You go to the Police Chiefs Association, and they certainly take a position on that. We would like to believe that there could be a world where guns aren't necessary. So, I mean, it's a risk factor.
It is.
As it relates to the drugs, Columbia University did a study that talked about how drugs and alcohol affect teens. And there was actually, I believe I saw it in the Providence Journal yesterday, the day before, that there was a new study that came out that binge drinking is still a serious problem, and it has not gone down. What the Columbia University study showed is how there can be other associations through drugs and alcohol, and I'm not proposing to be an expert in any of this, but what we do know is if an individual has a genetic propensity to mental illness, drugs and alcohol can exacerbate that. If you have a genetic propensity to addiction, drugs and alcohol can affect that. And what's been really interesting is our hotline volunteers, a lot of them come from Brown University, and I suddenly, in the last 5 years, have been getting more neuropsych majors and neuroscience majors to volunteer. And they explain to us how the body chemistry is changed by drugs and alcohol. And so there are a lot of websites out there. Certainly ours has that on there under Help for Everyone. But yes, you are right. Those are very specific problems that can add to the risk factors for suicide among teens.
Pardon me. I'm wondering now if we can go really cut to the chase, so to speak. What do we do about this? How can we help prevent it?
Well, let's first talk about if there was an emergency.
All right.
So you've got family members that are watching and they're saying, what do I do? The first thing we advise everyone to do is to call 911.
Oh, if there's an emergency, you don't call the Samaritans?
Nope, not anymore.
Okay.
Not in 1977, when the Rhode Island branch was around, there was no 911.
That's right, yes.
And you know, kids today don't even know that there was a world without 911. We got rescue calls, they would call the police directly. Today, in specifically Rhode Island, we have, Rhode Island is one of the few 911 systems in the nation that has a statewide GPS system. They can find people within about 500 yards, and most of their calls are coming through on cell phones.
Because it's a small state, so I can understand how effective that could be.
Right, but we advise that for all emergencies. And you can, you know, the emergencies come in all sizes and all shapes that we get, as well as what 911 gets. Who has got a gun, who's starting the process. It could be all kinds of issues. But if you believe somebody's at immediate risk, you call 911. You can call your local community mental health center. Most of them have 24-hour lines that you can get advice and information. You can walk into the nearest acute care hospital emergency room. By law, with or without insurance, they have to do an assessment. Doesn't make any difference the age, they have to do an assessment. So again, we tell parents, please take it seriously, walk into the nearest emergency room. We also encourage you to call your primary care doctor. In a child's case, it would be the pediatrician. All right. When you go to the emergency room, they don't ask you who your therapist is. They ask you who your doctor is. And the reason that happens, and this is something that you want everybody to understand, is that there are many physical problems that can present themselves as depression. And that doesn't matter whether it's a teen or it's an adult. All of that can be exacerbated by drugs and alcohol. But you may have an undiagnosed thyroid condition. Children can have thyroid problems. Then children could have endocrine problems. Somebody might have undiagnosed cancer. There's a whole host of physical problems you don't know why you don't feel good.
So you need that connection between the medical
And
the
behavioral
cognitive
health.
and behavioral.
Always connected. If you go to the emergency room, you make sure that your primary care doctor gets the information and the behavioral health people, and back and forth. The coordinated care piece is the single most important message you can give to people.
I think
because
that's true.
You don't want
across the
anything to
board.
be. You don't want anything to be
Yes,
missed.
yes.
And if suicide is considered a missed opportunity in prevention, you want to close those holes as many ways as you possibly can. So that coordinated care piece is so important. Now, what role does the Samaritans play in all of this?
You befriend people, number
We
one.
befriend people, and we've moved away from that emergency piece, although all the volunteers are trained to deal with it. We say on our website, if it's an emergency, call 911, need to talk, call the Samaritans.
And how many people just need to talk?
They just need to talk.
Nobody wants to listen anymore. Have you noticed?
I know, and they don't want to be a burden to people. And if you feel that that's an issue for a family member, give them a Samaritan phone number, whether it's ours or any of the Samaritan branches, and we can be the gateway to care. We help people when they're in a crisis, recovering from a crisis, and when they're recovered, when they're in care, out of care, and most importantly, when care is never going to be an option. And for so many people, they will never get care. And for kids, it can be a really important gateway. If you can talk to a Samaritan volunteer, maybe you'll talk to your teacher. Maybe you'll talk to your parent. Maybe you'll talk to a friend. Maybe you'll talk to a professional.
Sometimes you're right. Even with people without a suicide despair or feeling, just talking about a problem with a friend over a cup of coffee just seems to put it out there. Maybe more so for women, I don't know. But my friends, we do like to share what's going on in our lives. So I can understand what you're doing.
Well, one of the things you brought up at the very beginning was about who's at risk. What we do know is that men don't talk, and neither do boys. And so it's really important that a child, certainly a boy or a girl, but certainly boys need to develop relationships. And one of the challenges right now is with the economic problems in the municipalities, schools have lost a lot of the programming that keep kids connected.
This is actually you're reading my mind, because my next question is, I think schools should be able to help, but with all the cutbacks, they have reduced the number of counselors, nurses, and the kinds of people who deal with problems like suicide or physical disabilities and problems.
Sure.
So I'm just wondering, in the light of how our economy is and the tight budgets in schools, how can schools help?
Well, schools are already helping to a great deal. Remember how many hours a day a kid spends in school. And the messages that we deliver to the students when we go out to speak in a classroom is same message we start at the beginning: hopeless, nobody cares, doing everybody a favor. And we try to educate them to listen for that.
Oh, to listen for it.
In their own friends. And if they know something, they should tell somebody. Again, one of the myths is that if I say something, maybe my friend will do it. No, no, no. That thought's already in their head. And you need to tell somebody. Again, suicide is a missed opportunity. Tell somebody. And if your friend gets upset with you, but they get the help that they need and they don't talk to you, know that you did the right thing.
Yes.
And our website, and I just wanted to bring that up, on our website, which is SamaritansRI.org, we have across, at the end of it, we've got questions and answers, what to do in an emergency, but we have a youth and teen page. And it's called Youth Perspective, and it's teen perspective, parents' perspective, and teachers' perspectives. And we have lesson plans for the teachers, we have information for teens, but the most visited page on that website is the parents' page.
Is that so?
Tens of thousands of hits on the parents' pages, and the youth and teen pages are singly the most visited pages of our entire website.
The youth and teens?
Yep.
I thought you said the parents.
The whole youth and teen, and then it's teens, parents, and adults. That whole section.
That is
the most
highly visited.
The most highly visited, and within that, the parents' page is the most visited. Interestingly, we put the website up in 2004. We had 6,500 visitors to the website. It's gone up every single year, and last year we had more than 50,000. We're already at 60,000 visitors to our website.
Denise, you know, I'm so happy to hear that you have that resource, but my heart gets very heavy when I think that that many people are that concerned, and it speaks to our society. You know, with all, I don't know, all the handheld devices, I have one too, we're supposed to be more connected, but it just seems to me that it's leading to people being more and more isolated. We don't sit and play a game of checkers. We sit by ourselves and play a video game. And that is so good to hear that you're working and helping, but so sad to hear that so many people are in these straits. Well, we're coming to the end of the program, so I wonder if you could share, you've been doing this a long time, a reason for your disappointment in all this work, or frustration, and or some kind of accomplishment that gives you some hope and a feeling of optimism.
Well, the frustration is that we can't help more people. And you kind of alluded to that during the break, that funding has just been cut so dramatically that it affects your ability to reach out. No matter how you slice it, you have to spend money to be able to reach people. But the optimistic piece is the website. And while you looked at it as a negative, I looked at it as a positive, because more and more people are using the web.
I didn't see the website. Oh, you mean
to access information.
Yes. Ah, I see.
The fact
yes,
that the numbers are going up means that more people are learning how to use the web to help themselves and to get help.
Excellent.
So I think that's a positive, and we envision that in the future to be an even bigger role for helping people. So I'm looking at it that the future should be good.
Thank you so much, and you're so knowledgeable, and you obviously have so committed to this. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. And in closing, if you need a hotline or just want more information, contact the Samaritans. Their information will be listed on a screen right at the end of this show. And also check with your school. Make sure they have counselors who are equipped to work with young people who may have this need, may be facing suicide. This topic is serious, and it's essential to our talk about education, which you know I call school talk.